Imagine this. How often do you find yourself feeling lost, overwhelmed, or stuck in habits you know aren't helping you? Are there moments when you wish for a reset, a chance to truly change, but aren't sure where to begin? Every day, we meet challenges that can weigh us down and make us feel trapped in a cycle of unfulfillment. But what if the key to lasting change lies within us, waiting to be unlocked? Buddhism teaches that our inner transformation is not only possible but essential if we want to lead a life of true peace and purpose. Think about it. Consider a gardener tending to a tangled, overgrown garden. Each thorn and tangle represents a negative habit, a fear, or an unproductive thought. The gardener could simply ignore the mess, hoping it fixes itself, or they could take the first small step, clearing one branch at a time. This example shows that even the most complex inner gardens can be cultivated with steady care and commitment. This journey of self-transformation is what we're here to explore today. Welcome to Wisdom Woven, where we delve into timeless wisdom and practical advice to inspire change. If you find value in exploring topics that lead to a better you, you're in the right place. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% of viewers have subscribed. So please don't just watch, like, comment, share, and subscribe to support this channel. It really helps us continue bringing you content that makes a difference. In today's video, we'll start by laying out the essential Buddhist concepts that illuminate the path of self-transformation. Buddhism speaks to the nature of suffering as a catalyst for change. When we realize that our dissatisfaction often comes from within, it becomes clear that we have the power to change it. Buddhism doesn't promise an instant fix, but instead offers a method, a gradual unfolding of inner awareness. Through understanding our own minds and behaviors, we open doors to growth, resilience, and clarity. In Buddhism, the transformation journey is often about examining the roots of our discomfort. For instance, much of our suffering stems from attachment and resistance, the desire to hold on to what feels comfortable and the tendency to avoid what feels uncomfortable. This is why understanding impermanence, the nature of change, becomes such a core part of the path. When we see life as constantly changing, we begin to loosen our grip on things that no longer serve us. We learn to let go of the attachments that keep us stuck, and we find freedom in embracing the natural flow of life. By the end of this series, you'll have a deeper understanding of Buddhist principles and practical steps to reshape your thinking, habits, and outlook. We're here to help you learn how to live with greater purpose and peace. So stay with us as we explore each step of this transformative journey, understanding suffering and the root of self-improvement. Let's take a moment to think about the challenges you face daily. How often do you feel frustrated, anxious, or caught up in a problem that seems too big to solve? It could be a difficult relationship, an unfulfilling job, or just the constant worry about the future. These feelings of discomfort and dissatisfaction are part of what we experience as human beings. But what if we could understand them better? What if these very moments of struggle could hold the key to lasting change? In Buddhism, suffering is a fundamental part of life. But before you think this sounds too negative or hopeless, let's pause and really understand what it means. The Buddha taught that life is full of suffering, but this isn't a pessimistic statement. Rather, it's an observation of the human experience. Suffering isn't just about big, dramatic moments like illness or loss. It's the smaller, everyday moments that slowly wear us down. It's the constant desire for more success, more possessions, more approval. It's the frustration we feel when life doesn't go the way we want it. So why is suffering such a big part of the Buddhist path? Because it is through understanding suffering that we can find freedom from it. It's like noticing that your favorite shirt is getting a hole in it. If you ignore the hole, it will only get bigger and cause more damage. But if you address it, if you understand why the shirt is tearing, you can repair it and prevent further harm. Similarly, understanding the nature of suffering helps us repair our minds and hearts. By knowing why we suffer, we can find the path out of it. The Buddhist teaching on suffering, or dukkha, isn't about avoiding pain or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about seeing suffering clearly and understanding its causes. The first thing we learn is that suffering comes from craving, this constant desire for things to be different than they are. We crave comfort, success, recognition, and control over our lives. When these things don't come, we suffer. But even when they do come, the satisfaction is often temporary. This craving, this attachment, keeps us stuck in a cycle of endless longing and disappointment. Think of it like chasing after a mirage in the desert. No matter how far you walk, it seems like the water is just ahead. But the closer you get, the farther away it moves. This is what craving does to us. It keeps us in a constant state of longing without offering true satisfaction. We might get what we want, but it never lasts, and the desire for more always returns. This cycle of craving and dissatisfaction is a root cause of suffering, according to Buddhism. But here's the good news. If craving is the problem, then letting go of attachment is the solution. Buddhism doesn't just stop at identifying the problem. It offers a path forward. This path is called the Noble Eightfold Path, and it is the foundation of Buddhist practice. It provides practical steps to change our minds, behaviors, and attitudes. This path shows us how to end the cycle of craving and find lasting peace. To begin this journey, we must first cultivate awareness. Most of us go through life on autopilot, reacting to situations without really thinking about them. We chase after things because we've been conditioned to believe they will bring us happiness. But when we stop and observe our thoughts and emotions, we begin to see patterns. We notice that our cravings, our desires, aren't random. They are conditioned by our past experiences and by society's expectations. For example, consider how much of our happiness is tied to material things. From a young age, we're taught that we need certain things to be happy. A new phone, a bigger house, more money. But when we look closer, we might realize that no matter how much we get, the feeling of happiness is fleeting. We always want more. The things we once thought would make us happy often leave us feeling empty. This is because we are attaching our happiness to things that cannot provide it in a lasting way. But what if we could change that? What if we could begin to detach our happiness from external circumstances? This doesn't mean that we have to give up everything or live a life of deprivation. It simply means that we begin to understand that true happiness doesn't come from things. It comes from within. It comes from understanding who we are, what we need, and what we can let go of. When we learn to let go of attachment, we make room for something much more powerful: freedom. Freedom isn't about having more, it's about needing less. It's about being content with what we have and not constantly chasing after more. This is a central concept in Buddhism, the idea that true happiness comes not from accumulating things, but from releasing our attachment to them. So how do we start letting go of these attachments? The first step is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. It's about being aware of our thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations as they arise. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to notice the moments when we are grasping for things, when we are wishing for things to be different. We can then pause and ask ourselves, is this truly necessary? Does this bring me happiness? Or is it just a temporary distraction? In the beginning, this might feel difficult. Our minds are so used to chasing after desires that it can feel uncomfortable to let go. But the more we practice, the easier it becomes. We begin to see that the more we let go, the lighter we feel. We don't have to carry the weight of wanting and needing all the time. We can simply be with what is. Another key to overcoming suffering is to understand the nature of impermanence. Everything in life is constantly changing. Our bodies, our relationships, our jobs, nothing stays the same forever. But so often, we resist change. We want things to stay as they are because we fear the unknown. But by accepting that change is inevitable, we can free ourselves from the fear of loss. When we embrace impermanence, we begin to live with more peace. We don't cling to what we have. Instead, we appreciate it while it's here and let it go when it's time. This doesn't mean that we stop caring about the people or things in our lives. It simply means that we stop clinging to them as if they are the source of our happiness. We learn to enjoy life fully without being afraid of losing it. We learn to love without attachment. This is a deep form of freedom. The freedom to experience life as it is, without the constant fear of change or loss. Ultimately, the root of self-improvement lies in understanding the nature of suffering and how it arises. It's not about trying to avoid pain or discomfort, but about seeing them clearly and transforming our relationship to them. Suffering is not something to be feared. It's an opportunity to grow. By understanding its causes, we can free ourselves from the cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. And through mindfulness and acceptance, we can create a life of peace, contentment, and true happiness. This is just the beginning of the journey. As we move forward in the next parts of this series, we'll explore the specific steps and practices that can help us transform our minds and lives. But for now, take a moment to reflect on this teaching. Can you notice where attachment is creating suffering in your life? Can you begin to let go of some of the things that no longer serve you? By doing so, you're taking the first steps toward a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. Embracing impermanence, letting go of attachment. In life, everything changes. People change. Situations change. Even the way we feel changes, moment by moment. This is the truth of impermanence. Everything we experience, good or bad, will not stay the same forever. The world around us is in constant motion, and so are we. In Buddhism, the concept of impermanence, or anicca, teaches us to embrace change rather than fear it. But why is this so important for transforming our lives? You might wonder, why does this matter to me right now? What does understanding impermanence have to do with my daily struggles, my happiness, or the stress I carry? To answer, let's consider how attachment to things that are fleeting creates suffering. When we hold on too tightly to something, a job, a relationship, a plan, we start to fear losing it. We become anxious about the future and frustrated with the present, always holding on to what we can't control. This attachment becomes the very thing that holds us back from experiencing peace. Take a moment to think about a time when you were deeply attached to something. Perhaps you were in a relationship that you wanted to last forever, or maybe you had a dream you worked towards, but it didn't come to fruition the way you expected. When it ended, did you feel like part of you was taken away? That is the result of attachment. When we cling to something, we trap ourselves in the belief that it defines our happiness. We forget that happiness doesn't depend on what we have, but on how we approach life itself. The Buddha spoke about this attachment and how it causes suffering. He explained that we get caught in this endless cycle of wanting and needing, and when we don't get what we want, we feel frustration and despair. It's like grasping for a flower in a field, thinking it will make us happy, but when it wilts and fades, we are left with a feeling of emptiness. But here's the thing. If we truly understand impermanence, we can let go of this need to control and hold on. Instead of resisting change, we can embrace it. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean, watching the waves come and go. At first, you might try to hold on to the waves, wanting them to stay as they are. But you soon realize that they are always moving, always changing. They're part of the natural flow of life. The same is true for everything we experience. Relationships, jobs, and even emotions. Everything will come and go. It is the natural rhythm of existence. Now, it's not about becoming detached in a cold or distant way. It's not about pushing people or things away. Rather, it's about accepting them as they are, appreciating the moment without clinging to it. When you understand that everything is in a state of constant change, you begin to appreciate the beauty of each experience without the need to hold on to it forever. This allows you to move freely with life, to enjoy each moment fully without fear of losing it. In Buddhism, this idea is often expressed as the middle way, which is a path of balance. The middle way teaches us not to fall into extremes, not to over-attach to things, but also not to push them away out of fear. It's about finding a place of peaceful acceptance where you can experience life as it comes, knowing that change is a natural part of the process. The key to embracing impermanence is awareness. When you become aware of the things you are attached to, you can begin to release them. It's like unclenching your fist, allowing the tension to ease. This does not mean you stop caring or loving. On the contrary, it allows you to love without the fear of loss. It's about letting go of the need for control and trusting that life will unfold as it should. A simple practice to start embracing impermanence is to observe the changing nature of your own thoughts. One moment you might feel anxious, and the next, calm. One moment you might feel joyful, and the next, sad. If you watch closely, you'll see that emotions come and go just like the weather. They're never permanent. By recognizing this, you can stop identifying with them so strongly and allow yourself to experience each emotion fully without fear or resistance. When you realize that all emotions, thoughts and experiences are temporary, it becomes easier to let them pass without letting them define you. Take this practice into your daily life. When you feel stressed or upset, remind yourself that this too shall pass. When you're enjoying a moment of happiness, know that it is precious because it is fleeting. This doesn't mean you shouldn't cherish it. In fact, the more you accept that each moment is temporary, the more you'll appreciate it for what it is. When you release your grip on the need for things to last forever, you open yourself up to fully experiencing the richness of the present moment. But letting go of attachment doesn't mean you won't care. On the contrary, it helps you care more deeply. When we let go of the expectation that things will never change, we start to live in harmony with life's natural rhythm. We can be present without the fear of loss. We can love without clinging. We can work toward our goals with the understanding that they, too, are part of a flow that will evolve in ways we might not expect. And that's okay. Consider the story of a tree. The tree grows strong with roots deep in the earth, yet it knows that seasons will change. In spring, it blossoms. In autumn, its leaves fall away. But the tree doesn't resist this natural cycle. It doesn't mourn the leaves that fall or cling to the blossoms that once were. It simply lives with the seasons, knowing that each stage has its beauty and its purpose. In this way, we can learn to live with the cycles of our own lives, accepting the changes and growth that come, and letting go of what is no longer needed. Ultimately, embracing impermanence frees us from the burden of attachment. It helps us stop trying to hold on to things we can't control. It allows us to enjoy life more deeply because we understand that it is precious precisely because it is fleeting. When we stop clinging, we stop suffering, and we create space for real peace to grow within us. So, how can we apply this wisdom to our lives right now? Start by identifying what you are holding on to. Is it a relationship, a job, or an ideal that you feel you can't live without? Now, consider that these things may not stay the same forever. Instead of resisting change, allow yourself to let go of your attachment to them, not in a way that disconnects you, but in a way that frees you from the fear of losing them. Embrace the truth that everything is changing, and, in doing so, you will find a deeper sense of peace in your life. By living with awareness of impermanence, you begin to see the world as it truly is, constantly changing, constantly moving, and always offering new opportunities for growth and transformation. Embrace it and let go of the fear that holds you back. Through this process, you will find that transformation isn't something to strive for in the future. It's something you can experience in every moment, right now. The power of mindfulness, developing awareness and clarity. In our busy lives, it's easy to get lost in the noise. We rush from one task to the next, our minds jumping from thought to thought, and before we know it, we're exhausted, confused, and disconnected from ourselves. We often act on autopilot, reacting to situations without truly understanding what's happening within us or around us. But what if there was a way to pause, to step back from the chaos, and truly see things as they are? This is where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in each moment, aware of what's happening right now, without judgment or distraction. It's about paying attention to our thoughts, emotions, and actions, with the intention of understanding them better and choosing how to respond with clarity. Through mindfulness, we can learn to quiet the noise of our minds, create space between stimulus and reaction, and begin to live with intention and purpose. Imagine this scenario. You're sitting at a table, and in front of you is a cup of tea. If you're like most people, you might drink that tea absent-mindedly, thinking about what you have to do next or what happened earlier in the day. But mindfulness invites us to drink that tea as if it's the first time we've ever tasted it. We pay attention to the warmth of the cup, the steam rising from the tea, the delicate aroma, in the way the liquid feels as it touches our lips. We notice the sensations, the flavors, in the moment itself. This is mindfulness in action, being present, fully aware of the present moment, without rushing through it. This practice might seem simple, but it has profound effects. When we cultivate mindfulness, we begin to understand the workings of our own minds. We see the habits that drive our actions, the thoughts that influence our emotions, and the patterns that shape our lives. Through this awareness, we create the opportunity for change. Instead of reacting to life's challenges in the same old ways, we can pause, reflect, and respond in a way that is more aligned with our values and goals. One of the key insights of Buddhism is that suffering arises when we are unaware of our thoughts and feelings. We react to life circumstances without truly understanding them, and as a result, we create more confusion and discomfort for ourselves. By practicing mindfulness, we start to break free from this cycle. We learn to observe our thoughts without getting caught up in them. We learn to notice our emotions without letting them control us. And, most importantly, we learn to be present, without judgment, in each and every moment. Mindfulness is not about trying to change our thoughts or feelings. It's about observing them without attachment. In Buddhism, this is often referred to as the practice of right mindfulness, the ability to see things clearly, without distortion, and without the need to hold on to them. When we are mindful, we can observe our thoughts as they arise, without getting lost in them. We can acknowledge our feelings without letting them dictate our actions. We can experience life more fully, without the need to escape or avoid. This doesn't mean that mindfulness is always easy. In fact, it can be quite challenging. Our minds are constantly busy, filled with thoughts and distractions. We live in a world that demands our attention, pulling us in many different directions. But through consistent practice, we can train our minds to become more focused, more present, and more aware. Just like any skill, mindfulness requires practice, patience, and persistence. Over time, it becomes easier to notice when we're getting lost in thought, and we can gently guide ourselves back to the present moment. Buddhism teaches that mindfulness is not just about sitting in meditation or engaging in formal practices. It's about bringing mindfulness into every aspect of our lives. Whether we're eating, walking, working, or talking to someone, we can practice being fully present. The more we bring mindfulness into our daily activities, the more we begin to understand ourselves and the world around us. We start to notice the small things that we once overlooked. The way the sunlight filters through the trees, the sound of birds chirping in the morning, the feeling of the ground beneath our feet. These small moments of awareness help us reconnect with the present and cultivate a deeper sense of peace and gratitude. Mindfulness also teaches us to be compassionate toward ourselves. In our fast-paced, achievement-driven world, it's easy to become harsh or critical when we don't meet our expectations. But mindfulness invites us to be gentle with ourselves. It encourages us to accept ourselves as we are, without judgment. We may not be perfect, and that's okay. Through mindfulness, we can learn to appreciate our strengths and weaknesses, our successes and failures, without getting caught up in them. We learn to let go of the need to be anything other than what we are in the present moment. There's another important aspect of mindfulness. It helps us break free from the constant cycle of worry and anxiety. How often do we find ourselves dwelling on the past or worrying about the future? We replay old conversations in our minds, or we fear what might happen next. But mindfulness brings us back to the present. It reminds us that the past is gone and the future is yet to come. The only time we truly have is now. By focusing on the present moment, we can free ourselves from the endless cycle of worry and live with greater peace of mind. In Buddhism, mindfulness is also closely linked to the concept of right concentration. This is the ability to focus our minds on one thing at a time, without distraction. In today's world, we are constantly multitasking, jumping from one task to another, never fully focusing on any one thing. But mindfulness teaches us to slow down and focus on what truly matters. Whether it's a task at work, a conversation with a loved one, or a moment of quiet reflection, mindfulness helps us give our full attention to what's in front of us. The more we practice mindfulness, the more we begin to see the interconnectedness of all things. We realize that our thoughts, words, and actions are all connected, and that each one has an impact on the world around us. This understanding helps us live more consciously, making choices that align with our values and contribute to the well-being of others. When we are mindful, we become more compassionate, more patient, and more understanding, both with ourselves and with others. As we develop mindfulness, we also begin to experience greater clarity in our lives. We start to see things as they truly are, without the distortion of our fears, desires, or attachments. We gain insight into the nature of our minds, our relationships, and the world around us. This clarity allows us to make wiser decisions, navigate challenges with greater ease, and find peace even in the midst of uncertainty. Ultimately, Mindfulness is a powerful tool for transformation. It helps us break free from the patterns of thought and behavior that keep us stuck. It helps us reconnect with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us. And, most importantly, it helps us live with greater peace, happiness, and wisdom. The more we practice mindfulness, the more we come to understand the true nature of reality, the impermanence of all things, the interconnectedness of all beings, and the potential for growth and change within us all. In the next part, we'll explore how mindfulness leads to self-discipline, another essential part of the path to transformation. But for now, remember that mindfulness is not a destination but a practice, something that we cultivate each and every day. It's a powerful tool that can help us transform our lives, one moment at a time. Self-discipline, overcoming inner obstacles. Self-discipline is a powerful tool, but for many, the idea of self-discipline might sound like a restriction or a burden. We might think of it as an extra layer of rules and limitations that take away our freedom. But in truth, self-discipline is the very key to unlocking the freedom we truly seek. Without it, we stay trapped in cycles of self-doubt, impulsiveness, and regret. Imagine, for a moment, that your mind is like a wild horse. This horse is strong, fast, and full of energy, but without control, it can easily run in any direction, throwing you off course. When left untrained, the wild horse might chase after distractions, fear, or desires, pulling you further away from your goals and deeper into confusion. Self-discipline is the process of taming this wild horse, guiding it gently in the direction of your highest good. The teachings of Buddhism emphasize the importance of mental discipline. One of the core principles of Buddhist practice is the cultivation of mindfulness and control over the mind. The Buddha described the mind as the forerunner of all things, which means that everything we experience begins in the mind. If our mind is scattered, impulsive, and undisciplined, the experiences we create will be chaotic and filled with unnecessary suffering. But when we train the mind to be focused, calm, and intentional, our actions naturally follow suit, and we begin to shape a life of peace and clarity. One of the main obstacles that self-discipline helps us overcome is the habitual nature of our thoughts and behaviors. All of us have habits, some positive, some negative, that we repeat daily. These habits are often born out of unconscious patterns, formed over time through our reactions to external events or our desires for comfort. If we want to change our lives, we must first recognize these habits and make a conscious effort to break the cycle. Take a moment to think about your daily routine. What are the habits that govern your actions, your thoughts, and your emotions? Are there habits that hold you back from your true potential? Perhaps you tend to react impulsively when faced with stress, or maybe you find yourself procrastinating on important tasks. These habits, though automatic, are not set in stone. They can be changed through the power of self-discipline. The Buddhist teachings offer practical guidance for developing self-discipline. One of the most effective tools is meditation. Through meditation, we learn to observe our thoughts without judgment, which helps us detach from the endless stream of impulses that often distract us. Over time, this practice allows us to strengthen our ability to focus and choose our actions more intentionally. In meditation, we learn to sit with discomfort rather than immediately seek to avoid it. For example, when a distracting thought arises, instead of following it, we simply acknowledge it and let it go, returning our focus to the present moment. This act of returning again and again to our breath or our point of focus builds discipline in the mind, teaching us that we don't have to react impulsively to every thought, feeling, or sensation that arises. This same principle applies to our everyday actions. When we encounter situations that trigger old habits, whether it's stress, frustration, or temptation, self-discipline allows us to pause, to step back, and to choose a more mindful response. Rather than automatically reacting, we can act with intention and clarity, choosing actions that align with our values and long-term goals. But let's be clear, developing self-discipline is not about being perfect or harsh with ourselves. It's not about suppressing our desires or denying ourselves the things we enjoy. Rather, it's about being aware of our choices and understanding the consequences of those choices. Self-discipline is about striking a balance, learning to say no to short-term pleasures or distractions in order to create a more fulfilling and meaningful life in the long run. This idea is rooted deeply in Buddhist teachings. One of the most famous Buddhist concepts is the middle way, which refers to the path between extremes. The middle way teaches us to avoid both the indulgence of our desires and the repression of our desires. Instead, it calls for moderation and mindful awareness in all things. Self-discipline, in this sense, is not about denying our natural impulses, but about finding a harmonious balance between our desires and our higher goals. A simple example of self-discipline in practice can be found in the way we eat. Many of us have a tendency to eat impulsively, driven by cravings, stress, or habit. But when we practice mindfulness in eating, we begin to observe our hunger and satiety signals more clearly. We become aware of how food affects our bodies and minds, and we can make healthier choices that nourish us rather than simply satisfying a fleeting desire. This kind of mindful eating is a small but powerful example of how self-discipline can lead to a greater sense of well-being. Another example is in the realm of work or study. How often do we find ourselves procrastinating, putting off tasks that we know are important? Self-discipline helps us push through this resistance and take action, even when we don't feel like it. It's the ability to focus our attention on the task at hand, to do what needs to be done without distraction or delay. This doesn't mean working endlessly without rest, but rather creating a balance between effort and relaxation, knowing when to push forward and when to step back and recharge. But what happens when we fail? When we lose our focus or slip back into old habits? The key here is to practice compassion toward ourselves. Buddhist teachings remind us that we are all imperfect and mistakes are part of the journey. The Buddha himself emphasized the importance of patience and perseverance. It's not about being perfect, it's about showing up again and again and learning from our experiences. When we face setbacks, self-discipline allows us to stay committed to our path, knowing that transformation is a process, not an overnight change. Each step forward, no matter how small, is progress. When we fall short, we can gently guide ourselves back to our practice, rather than criticize or judge ourselves harshly. This compassionate approach to self-discipline allows us to stay motivated and avoid the trap of discouragement. Ultimately, the practice of self-discipline is an expression of self-love. It's the willingness to do what is necessary to create the life we truly want, even when it's difficult or uncomfortable. It's about choosing long-term growth over short-term gratification. It's about recognizing that we have the power to shape our minds and actions, and through this, we can shape our destiny. In the next part, we'll explore how the practice of compassion and kindness plays a vital role in self-discipline. Together, these qualities form a foundation for a balanced, peaceful life, helping us overcome the inner obstacles that keep us stuck and guiding us toward a path of true transformation. Compassion and kindness, the keys to inner peace. Imagine waking up every day with a heart full of kindness, a mind clear of grudges, and a soul at peace. How would that feel? Imagine living in a world where you let go of all your resentments and instead embrace love, not just for others but for yourself. Compassion and kindness are not just ideas, they are transformative forces that can change our lives in profound ways. In this part, we will explore how these two virtues are central to Buddhist teachings and why they are key to finding lasting peace and happiness. In Buddhism, compassion, known as karuna, is one of the most important qualities to cultivate. Compassion goes beyond just feeling sorry for someone or having pity for their suffering. True compassion means wanting to alleviate that suffering, to bring peace, joy, and relief to others. It is an active quality. It asks, "How can I help?" instead of simply acknowledging, "I see your pain." Compassion is a powerful energy that not only helps others but heals ourselves as well. You might wonder, how can I be kind when the world around me is filled with so much negativity and hardship? The answer lies in the simple understanding that the world is full of suffering, but that does not mean we must add to it. Each day, we encounter people facing struggles, whether it's the stranger on the street, our family members, or even ourselves. Every person has their own battles, invisible to the eye, and yet so real. Buddhist teachings remind us that to develop compassion, we must start by recognizing that all beings, including ourselves, wish to be free from suffering and find happiness. The Buddha taught that all living beings are interconnected, and this truth makes compassion essential. When we practice kindness and compassion, we are not only improving the lives of others, but also transforming our own hearts. When we extend compassion, it helps dissolve the walls of separation that we often build around ourselves. These walls, built from judgment, fear, and misunderstanding, keep us isolated. But when we practice compassion, we break down these walls and begin to see that we are not separate from others. We share the same human experience. The suffering of another is not something to ignore, but something to acknowledge and act upon, because in their suffering, we also see our own humanity. Now, think about kindness. In Buddhism, kindness is the seed that sprouts into a compassionate life. Kindness begins in small, simple acts. It's in a smile, a kind word, a helping hand, or the patience to listen. Too often, we overlook these small moments, thinking they don't matter. But they do. Kindness is not about grand gestures. It's about being consistently gentle and understanding with ourselves and with others. It's about responding with warmth, not harshness. It's about being patient when someone is struggling, even if their struggle is something you cannot fully understand. It's about seeing others as they are, without judgment, and offering a space of kindness for them to be themselves. In our busy lives, it's easy to forget about the power of kindness. We get caught up in our own concerns, our goals, our frustrations, our fears, and we forget to notice the struggles of those around us. But when we take a moment to step outside of our own world and truly see others, we open the door to compassion. And through compassion, we open the door to peace. It's like a ripple in a pond. The more kindness you give, the more it spreads, and the more peace you bring into your life and the lives of those around you. Buddhism teaches us that kindness and compassion should not just be directed at those we love or those who treat us well. In fact, the true test of compassion is when we can extend kindness even to those who hurt us, those we don't understand, or those who challenge us. This is where true transformation happens. It's easy to be kind to someone who is kind to us, but can we be kind to someone who is rude or angry? Can we show compassion to those who have wronged us? This is where we find the deepest healing. When we respond with kindness to negativity, we break the cycle of anger and resentment. We no longer allow the actions of others to control our peace. Imagine a scenario where someone in your life has hurt you deeply. Perhaps they've spoken harsh words or caused you pain in some way. Now, picture yourself responding not with anger, but with understanding. You might say to yourself, I don't know what struggles this person is going through. I don't know their pain, but I know that they too are suffering in some way. In that moment, you have chosen to break the cycle of harm. You have chosen kindness. You have chosen peace. And that choice begins to transform you, to heal the wounds that anger and bitterness create. It's important to remember that practicing compassion and kindness doesn't mean allowing others to hurt us or to take advantage of our generosity. In Buddhism, compassion is paired with wisdom. Compassion does not mean we sacrifice our own well-being or ignore our own needs. It means we act with discernment, knowing when to show kindness and when to protect ourselves. Compassion is not weakness, it is strength. It takes courage to face the suffering of others and to offer a hand. It takes courage to look beyond our own hurts and choose to heal rather than to retaliate. In fact, the more we practice compassion, the more we develop strength in our hearts. The Buddha spoke about how compassion is a source of boundless energy, a limitless resource that, when cultivated, only grows. The more we give, the more we receive. The more we open ourselves to the suffering of others, the more we open ourselves to love and joy. This doesn't mean we become martyrs or sacrifice our happiness, but rather, we expand our capacity to love, to understand, and to forgive. Kindness and compassion also help us to develop a sense of interconnection with all beings. We begin to realize that we are not separate from others, that their joy and sorrow are intertwined with our own. When we practice compassion, we are acknowledging that every living being deserves to be free from suffering. We are not just practicing kindness to feel good or to receive something in return. We are practicing kindness because we understand that in helping others, we are helping ourselves. When we act with compassion, we are planting seeds of peace that will grow in our hearts and in the hearts of others. So, how do we begin? Start small. Start with a smile to a stranger, a kind word to a friend, or a moment of patience in the face of frustration. These small acts may seem insignificant, but they have a profound impact. They are the foundation of a compassionate life. As we practice these small acts of kindness, we begin to notice the world around us changing. We begin to feel lighter, more peaceful, and more connected. Compassion becomes a natural part of who we are. And when we meet difficulty in our lives, we will be better equipped to face it with a calm heart, knowing that kindness and compassion are the tools that will guide us through. In the end, compassion and kindness are not just for others. They are for us, too. By cultivating these qualities, we are healing ourselves. We are learning to be gentle with our own hearts, to forgive ourselves, and to let go of the negativity that holds us back. We are discovering that inner peace doesn't come from changing the world around us. It comes from changing how we respond to the world. When we embrace compassion, we are taking the first step toward living a life of true freedom, happiness, and peace. And it all begins with kindness. The middle way, balancing extremes for a balanced life. Life often feels like a tightrope walk, doesn't it? On one side, there's the pull of too much indulgence, where we give in to our desires, thinking they will bring us happiness. On the other side, there's the extreme of denial, where we push ourselves too hard, trying to avoid anything pleasurable, believing that only strict discipline will lead to peace. Both these paths, though, lead us away from the balance that brings true contentment. The middle way, a core teaching of Buddhism, offers us a path between these extremes, leading us to a balanced and peaceful life. The middle way doesn't mean living in a constant state of indecision or settling for mediocrity. It's about finding harmony and living in a way that honors both our physical and spiritual needs. It's about being neither too indulgent nor too harsh with ourselves. Instead, we aim for a balanced approach to all aspects of life: work, relationships, health, and even our inner peace. It's the art of knowing when to act and when to rest, when to give and when to let go. The middle way guides us to live with intention, where we are present in each moment, free from the influence of extremes. Buddhism teaches that the extremes of indulgence and asceticism, although seemingly opposite, are actually two sides of the same coin. Indulgence might look like excess, eating too much, overworking, or constantly seeking pleasure, but it leaves us feeling empty. We may think we're getting closer to happiness, but it's fleeting. Asceticism, on the other hand, is the extreme of self-denial. Here, we push ourselves beyond what is healthy, thinking that by depriving ourselves, we can achieve purity or enlightenment. But this path often leads to exhaustion, bitterness, and frustration. We end up hurting ourselves in the name of self-improvement. The middle way teaches that instead of swinging between indulgence and self-punishment, we can live in a way that brings balance. This means being aware of our needs and desires, but not being ruled by them. We can enjoy life's pleasures, but without letting them control us. We can work hard and strive for success, but without burning ourselves out. This balanced approach leads us to greater peace, because we're no longer chasing something outside of ourselves, thinking it will make us happy. Instead, we're learning to find contentment in each moment, whether it's a moment of joy or a moment of difficulty. Let's consider a simple example to understand the middle way better. Imagine you're trying to build a healthy routine. If you push yourself too hard, saying you must work out every day without fail, you might end up exhausted or injured. On the other hand, if you indulge in laziness and avoid exercise altogether, you'll miss out on the health benefits. The middle way would be about finding a balance, working out a few times a week in a way that's sustainable and enjoyable. You don't push too hard, but you also don't avoid taking care of your body. This approach is not only good for your physical health, but also for your mental well-being. In the same way, we can apply the middle way to our emotional and mental lives. Often, we swing between extremes in how we handle stress or emotions. Sometimes, we bottle everything up, refusing to express our feelings because we believe that to be strong. Other times, we might react impulsively, giving in to anger or frustration. Both extremes cause suffering. The middle way is about acknowledging our emotions, understanding them, and responding in a way that is thoughtful and balanced. It means not letting our emotions rule us, but not suppressing them either. Instead, we learn to express our feelings in healthy ways without letting them dictate our actions. Another example is in our relationships. We might sometimes be overly accommodating, always giving in to others' demands and needs, hoping that we'll keep the peace. But this can lead to resentment because we ignore our own needs. On the other hand, we might become too self-centered, always thinking about our own wants and pushing others away. The middle way asks us to find a balance, learning to listen to others with compassion, but also knowing when to speak up for ourselves. It's about being generous, but also setting healthy boundaries. In doing so, we build relationships that are respectful, fulfilling, and rooted in mutual understanding. The beauty of the middle way is that it doesn't ask us to renounce anything we love or desire. Rather, it encourages us to enjoy life in moderation, recognizing that nothing is permanent. Our attachment to anything, whether it's food, success, or even people, can lead to suffering if we hold on too tightly. By practicing the middle way, we learn to enjoy things without clinging to them. We find joy in the present moment without worrying about losing what we have. The middle way also teaches us not to be too rigid in our thinking. In our fast-paced, modern world, it's easy to fall into the trap of all-or-nothing thinking. We might think that if we don't do something perfectly, it's not worth doing at all. But the middle way reminds us that life is not about perfection. It's about making progress, however small. It's about taking steps forward, even if those steps are imperfect. This mindset frees us from the pressure of achieving perfection and helps us embrace the journey, knowing that each step brings us closer to balance. In the practice of meditation, the middle way is a vital concept. Many people approach meditation with an intense, almost forceful desire for calm or enlightenment. This approach, however, can create more frustration. The middle way teaches us to approach meditation with patience, letting go of any expectations. We simply sit, breathe, and observe, without judging ourselves for how well we meditate. This simple approach helps us cultivate a peaceful mind, free from the pressures of achieving something. It's not about the outcome, it's about the process. When we adopt the middle way, we also begin to let go of comparisons. It's easy to look at others and think they have it all together, especially in today's social media-driven world. But when we practice balance, we stop looking for validation in others. We stop measuring our success against theirs. Instead, we focus on our own journey, knowing that everyone's path is different. The middle way asks us to trust in our own process, understanding that we are exactly where we need to be. Another important aspect of the middle way is understanding the impermanence of life. We know that everything changes and nothing stays the same. The highs will fade and the lows will eventually pass. This understanding brings us peace because we don't get stuck in any one moment. When things are going well, we don't get attached to them, knowing they won't last forever. When things are difficult, we don't despair because we understand that this too shall pass. Embracing the impermanence of life allows us to live more fully in each moment, appreciating the present without clinging to it. Living the middle way doesn't mean that life will always be easy. There will still be challenges, difficulties, and moments of uncertainty. But what it does offer is a deeper sense of balance, where we can navigate the ups and downs with grace. Instead of reacting impulsively, we learn to pause and respond thoughtfully. Instead of seeking extremes, we learn to live in the space between, finding peace in the balance. In conclusion, the middle way teaches us that the path to true happiness is not in avoiding life's pleasures or denying ourselves completely. It's about embracing life with wisdom, finding balance in every aspect, and letting go of extremes. By practicing the middle way, we create a life that is not only peaceful but also meaningful, where we find joy in both simplicity and depth. So, the next time you're faced with a decision, ask yourself, is this an extreme or is it a balanced choice? The middle way invites you to live with intention, in a way that honors both your human nature and your deeper spiritual aspirations. Breaking the cycle of negative karma. In life, it sometimes feels as though we are trapped in a cycle. We might act in certain ways, only to see those same patterns replay in our lives over and over again. Whether it's in relationships, work, or even the way we feel about ourselves, negative patterns can be difficult to break. Buddhism teaches us that this cycle is not a random occurrence. It is something that we create with our actions, thoughts, and intentions. But the good news is, we have the power to break free from it. In Buddhist teachings, this cycle is referred to as samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. It is often seen as a cycle of suffering, where we continue to live and repeat our actions based on the same old habits and desires. But samsara doesn't just refer to physical rebirth. It refers to the cycle of mental habits and emotional patterns that keep us stuck in suffering. The same negative thoughts, the same reactions, the same frustrations can continue to repeat unless we break the cycle consciously. One of the key reasons for these repeated patterns is what is called karma. Karma is the law of cause and effect. Everything we do, every action, every word, and every thought leaves an imprint on our lives. These imprints, or karmic seeds, grow and influence future experiences. If we act with kindness and clarity, positive karma will come back to us in various forms. But if we act with anger, jealousy, or selfishness, the seeds of negativity are planted, and we will face the consequences of those actions in the future. However, karma is not a system of punishment or reward. It is simply cause and effect. It's not that the universe is punishing you or rewarding you. Rather, your actions and thoughts are creating the reality you experience. The good news is that the power to change our future lies in how we respond today. Every moment is a new opportunity to plant new seeds and break the cycle. Let's take a look at how this works. Imagine you have a habit of reacting with impatience when things don't go your way. When someone cuts you off in traffic, or when you're stuck waiting in line, that impatience builds. Over time, this impatience starts to affect your relationships and your peace of mind. The more you react negatively, the more that pattern becomes ingrained. This is a karmic pattern, one that you've created and reinforced with every reaction. But here's the turning point. You can choose a different path. Instead of reacting with impatience, you can pause and take a deep breath. You can remind yourself that the situation doesn't have to control your peace. You can choose kindness over anger, patience over frustration. In that single moment of awareness, you begin to break the karmic cycle. This is how Buddhist teachings help us change the course of our lives. Buddhism doesn't ask us to deny or suppress our emotions, but it does teach us to be aware of them and not let them control us. When we recognize our habits and patterns, we have the power to change them. Awareness is the first step in breaking the cycle of negative karma. When you make the effort to act with mindfulness, you create new karmic seeds. These seeds are like new patterns of behavior, ones that reflect a more compassionate, aware, and balanced self. The more you nurture these positive patterns, the more they grow, and the more you start to experience positive changes in your life. The past no longer has to define your future. The teachings of karma are also deeply tied to the idea of intention. In Buddhism, it's not just the action itself that matters, but the intention behind it. For example, you might give a gift to someone, but if your intention is to show love and kindness, the karma created by that action is very different than if your intention is to impress someone or seek something in return. It's the purity of your intention that creates the karmic seeds. This brings us to a crucial aspect of breaking the cycle: mindfulness. The more mindful you become of your actions and your thoughts, the more control you have over your responses. Mindfulness isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. It's about noticing when a negative thought or reaction arises and choosing to respond with awareness and intention. It's about planting seeds of peace, kindness, and understanding, even when life gets tough. One of the most transformative practices in Buddhism is meditation. Through meditation, we can begin to untangle the web of our thoughts and emotions. Meditation allows us to step back from the constant stream of thoughts and simply observe them. This practice helps us recognize the patterns that arise within us, the anger, the jealousy, the fear, and, with patience, learn to let go of them. It's through this process of self-reflection and awareness that we can begin to break free from the cycle of negative karma. Meditation also helps us develop compassion, a powerful antidote to negative karma. When we act with compassion, we are not just acting out of kindness to others, but we are also healing ourselves. Compassion is a powerful force that dissolves negative energy and creates positive karmic seeds. Whether it's compassion for someone else or compassion for ourselves, it shifts our perspective and helps us see beyond our habitual reactions. One of the most powerful ways to break the cycle of negative karma is through forgiveness. Holding on to anger or resentment from the past creates a heavy burden that we carry with us. It ties us to the past, preventing us from fully experiencing the present. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing hurtful behavior, but it means letting go of the emotional grip that those past actions have on you. It's an act of freedom, freedom from the cycle of suffering and negative karma. It's also important to understand that breaking the cycle of negative karma doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process, one that requires patience and persistence. The key is to keep going, even when it feels difficult. Each small step, each moment of awareness, brings you closer to breaking free from the cycle. And every time you choose to act with mindfulness, kindness, and compassion, you are creating a new path, one that leads to peace and freedom. In conclusion, breaking the cycle of negative karma is about recognizing the patterns that bind us and making a conscious effort to change them. It's about cultivating awareness, developing compassion, and practicing mindfulness in every aspect of our lives. And while the process may take time, the rewards are profound. A life of greater peace, clarity, and freedom from suffering. The power to break the cycle is in your hands, and with each step, you are creating a brighter future for yourself and those around you. The ongoing journey of self-improvement. As we come to the final part of this journey, let me remind you, this is not the end, but the beginning. We have covered a lot of ground, but the real transformation comes not from learning, but from practicing. We have talked about mindfulness, compassion, wisdom, discipline, and many other aspects of the path. Now, it's time to take all that wisdom and put it into action. But before we jump into that, let me ask you one simple question. Are you ready to keep going? When you take the first step on the path to change, it might feel like a great leap. You might feel that the road ahead is long and difficult, but remember, every journey starts with just one small step, and that step can make all the difference. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that change should happen quickly or all at once. We want instant results, but true change, the kind that lasts, is like a plant growing slowly, its roots deepening, its branches reaching upwards, little by little. The teachings of Buddhism remind us that nothing in this world is permanent. Everything changes, and so do we. But change takes time. You might feel that, after learning so much, you should have everything figured out. But the truth is, even the wisest of us are always learning, always growing, and always changing. The key is to remain patient with yourself, to trust that each step you take is part of your growth. Remember the garden we spoke about earlier? It's the same with your life. You may see areas of your life that feel messy or unkempt, but just like a gardener working steadily, you can tend to those areas, bit by bit. There is no rush. The garden does not judge you for how long it takes to grow, and neither should you judge yourself. Each small effort contributes to a beautiful whole. I want you to think about your life as a continuous journey. The moment you think you are done growing, you have stopped. There's always room to improve, to learn, to become more present, and to let go of old habits that no longer serve you. The Buddha taught us that the path to freedom is endless. It's not a goal we reach and then stop. It's a lifelong practice of awareness, compassion, and wisdom. Each day offers new opportunities to become a better version of yourself. In every moment, you have a choice. You can choose to react with impatience, frustration, or anger, or you can choose to pause, to breathe, and to respond with mindfulness. Each of these choices shapes who you are. The more you practice, the more automatic these wise choices will become. It will no longer feel like a struggle. It will feel like second nature. You will notice that the way you handle difficult situations begins to change. You'll feel less stressed, less anxious, and more at peace. This peace comes from understanding that you are not your thoughts or your emotions. You are the awareness that watches them. Just as clouds come and go in the sky, so do thoughts and feelings come and go in your mind. When you learn to observe without judgment, without attachment, you can find a place of calm amidst the storm. This is the true freedom that Buddhism points to. Freedom from the constant pull of desires, from the fear of change, from the need for things to be different than they are. I encourage you to take the teachings we've discussed and apply them in your life. Don't wait for a perfect moment or a perfect day. Start now. Begin with small steps. If you want to cultivate more mindfulness, start by paying attention to your breath as you go about your daily activities. If you want to practice more compassion, start by showing kindness to yourself and others. even in the small moments. If you want to develop wisdom, start by questioning your assumptions and beliefs and seeking deeper truths. There will be days when it feels like you are not making progress. There will be moments when you feel lost or uncertain. But remember, this is part of the process. Just as a river carves its path through the mountains, your path to self-improvement will shape itself, even when it feels slow. And in those moments of doubt, trust that you are exactly where you need to be. Every experience, every challenge, and every success is part of your journey. And always remember the core lesson of Buddhism. Suffering is not something to avoid, but something to understand. We suffer because we resist change. We hold on to things that are fleeting, and we expect life to be different from what it is. But when we accept that life is full of change, when we embrace the impermanence of all things, we are free. We are free from the fear of losing, from the anxiety of the future, and from the regret of the past. This is why the path of self-improvement is not just about doing more, but about being more, being present, being aware, being compassionate. It's about transforming your relationship with yourself and the world around you. Every step you take on this path, no matter how small, brings you closer to the peace and happiness that are already within you. As we reach the end of this video, I want to leave you with this. You are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. You are already whole. Your journey is not about becoming someone else. It's about uncovering who you truly are beneath all the layers of fear, doubt, and distraction. This is the real work, to peel away those layers and reveal the peace, wisdom, and love that reside in the heart of all beings. Now, I know this might feel like a lot to take in, and that's okay. Don't worry if you don't have all the answers right now. The key is to keep going. Keep practicing, keep learning, and keep growing. With each passing day, you will find yourself becoming more of who you are meant to be. The path to self-improvement is not about perfection, but about progress. Every step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to the peace and happiness you deserve. Before I end, I want to thank you for being with me on this journey. I hope the wisdom shared here will inspire you to live with more mindfulness, compassion, and joy. If this video has helped you, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom Woven. Your support helps us continue bringing more valuable insights to help transform your life. Remember, the journey doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. Keep moving forward and let the wisdom of these teachings guide you every step of the way.